No room for you and the kids, we're full, my dad said like every holiday before. Yet somehow my sister's kids, husband and dog filled the table. I never argued. This year I bought a 5-bedroom loft in Manhattan. When Mom said, "We'll be there tonight," my reply was cold. The worst part wasn't that they forgot me. It was that they never even noticed I was missing. Every holiday was like clockwork. My dad would pick up the phone just long enough to say, "No room for you and the kids, we're full," and hang up before I could say anything back. I got used to it. Didn't even flinch after the 3rd year. He always made it sound like a logistical issue. Like there physically wasn't a single inch left for me in their perfectly decorated, overly warm suburban house. But what always got me, every single time, was how Erica's family somehow fit just fine. Her kids. Her loud, sarcastic husband. Their massive dog. They filled the house with noise and dog hair and constant chaos. And yet there was always space for them. One year my daughter Lena asked why we weren't invited. She was 6. I told her they didn't have enough chairs. And then Erica posted a picture of their dog sitting on a kitchen stool with a napkin around his neck. So yeah, it wasn't about chairs. It never was. So I kept quiet. No fights. No arguments. I convinced myself I didn't need any of them. And honestly I didn't, but it still hurt. Every year I cooked a small dinner for the kids. Just us. No extended family. No cousins running through the halls. Just silence, broken by cartoons and the clink of our forks. What they didn't know was what I was doing in all that silence. I was working. Nights. Weekends. I'd put the kids to bed and study contracts until 3 a.m. I got my degree. Landed a job in a law firm most people only dream about. And this year I did something I never thought I'd do. I bought a 5-bedroom loft in Manhattan. I didn't tell them. I didn't even post it online. I wanted peace, not congratulations. I filled it with art. Books. Real furniture. The kind that doesn't come in boxes. My kids had their own rooms finally. With real doors. We had views of the river, a terrace with skyline sunsets, and a kitchen that looked like something off a magazine cover. And then a week before Thanksgiving my mom called. Out of nowhere. She didn't say hi. Just jumped in with, "We'll be there tonight. Your father's dying to see the new place." Like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like they hadn't spent the last 8 years treating me like the relative you wave at from across the street. I said, "That's not going to happen." He sounded shocked. Asked if something was wrong. Said they were just thinking maybe it would be nice to change things up this year. That Erica's house was getting a bit tight. I let her sit in that awkward silence for a while before I said I had plans. That we'd be out of town. She hung up. No goodbye. Just a click. But 2 days later, while standing in the middle of my living room, the kind of living room that belongs in movies, I changed my mind. Not because I missed them. Not because I wanted forgiveness or some warm family moment. I changed my mind because this was the first year they actually wanted something from me. And I wanted them to see exactly what they'd overlooked. So I called her back. Said I was staying in town after all. She sounded excited. "We'll be there Wednesday night. Erica's bringing her famous sweet potatoes." I said, "Great," and hung up. What I didn't say was that this wasn't going to be the holiday they expected. They wanted Thanksgiving at my place? Fine. But they were going to choke on the taste of what they threw away. They arrived late, of course. Wednesday night turned into early Thursday morning. The intercom buzzed at 12:17 a.m., loud enough to wake up the whole floor. "We're downstairs." My mom chirped like we'd all been waiting for royalty. I took the elevator down, barefoot and tired. I hadn't planned to stay up, but I guess part of me knew they wouldn't respect a time I never set. When the door slid open, there they were. Erica stood in front like she owned the building, pulling 2 massive suitcases behind her like she was checking in for a week-long vacation. Her husband followed, balancing a tray of homemade food and grunting about the parking situation. Behind them came my dad holding the leash of their dog, a shedding golden retriever that had already started barking the second he stepped into the lobby. They didn't even say hi. They just breezed in like it was owed to them. The moment we stepped into the apartment, the dog bolted, sliding across the polished floors and running straight into the kids' play area. Erica's kids trailed behind, already yelling. One of them had sticky fingers and immediately touched the glass railing on the terrace. The other pulled a decorative pillow off the couch and threw it across the room like it was part of a game. "No, thank you." "No, sorry we're late." Nothing. My mom stepped in last, slowly, like she was absorbing every inch of the place. She looked up at the high ceilings, scanned the custom lighting, glanced down the hallway and said, "Well, this is bigger than Erica's whole house, isn't it?" I just stood there and watched them turn my home into a motel. By the time I walked into the guest rooms to check on them, my neatly folded towels were already on the floor. Someone had taken one of my skincare bottles into the bathroom and left the cap off. The dog was sleeping on my hallway rug, snoring. I went back to my room without saying a word. Thanksgiving morning started early, not because I planned it that way, but because Erica's kids woke everyone up yelling about the Wi-Fi password. I walked into the kitchen, still in pajamas, and found Erica unpacking her dishes, like she was catering an event. She looked over and said, "Oh good, you didn't cook anything serious." I was worried I'd have to make space. "I'll just use the oven for the stuffing and sweet potatoes." I told her I had already planned our menu. She smiled like she didn't hear me. The fridge was already half full of their things. Tupperware containers stacked unevenly, spilling a little onto the shelves. My mom was rearranging things inside, making comments under her breath about how my fridge wasn't holiday ready. My dad asked if I had the sports package on my TV. Erica's husband turned on the game and stretched out across my white sectional. Shoes on. At some point, Lena came into the kitchen holding her school project. A paper turkey with things she was thankful for written on each feather. She had taped it to the fridge the night before. "Grandma took it down," she whispered. I turned. Sure enough, the turkey was on the counter, face down, replaced with a black and white photo collage of Erica's family in matching sweaters. I put Lena's turkey back up. No one noticed. By 3 p.m. the house smelled like cinnamon, garlic, and chaos. I watched from the corner as Erica told my youngest not to touch grown-up plates. My mom scolded Lena for asking for seconds before everyone else had finished. My dad at one point asked if I was actually using this space, or just pretending I lived here. But the worst part was dinner. They sat at my table with my silverware, under the custom lighting I picked out myself, and toasted to "How far we've all come." My mom raised her glass and said, "Honestly, we were worried for a while. But this is a surprise." Erica chimed in. "Yeah, I always said you were the quiet one. But wow. This place is impressive." I didn't speak. I didn't smile. I just listened. And I realized something right then. They weren't here for me. They were here for the show. For the photos. For the story they could tell their friends. "Look how well Madison's done. Isn't she lucky?" They had no idea what it took. What I gave up. The nights I cried into textbooks while the kids slept on an air mattress. The meals I skipped. The birthdays I worked through. But now they were here. In my house. Pretending we were a family. I thought dinner was the breaking point. But it was nothing compared to the quiet tension that crept in the next morning. Thick, invisible, and impossible to shake. Friday started with Erica yelling across the loft at 6:42 a.m. She couldn't find her son's tablet and immediately accused my kids of taking it. Not asking, accusing. I was still in bed when I heard her say, "Check their rooms." Seriously. He had it on the bed last night. I got up, opened my bedroom door, and just stared at her. She was already halfway down the hallway. I told her to back off. He didn't. Instead, she walked into my son's room without knocking. My kids were still in their pajamas, confused and quiet, as she searched around like it was some kind of investigation. The tablet? Under her own suitcase. Not a word of apology. Just a scoff and "Wow. Guess I'm losing it." Breakfast was worse. Cereal spilled across the floor. My expensive kitchen stools pushed sideways. Erica's kids took over the living room, remote in hand, flipping through shows and changing settings on the smart TV. One of them disconnected the sound system and started crying when it didn't work. My mom walked into the kitchen, saw the mess, and said, "I guess you're still not much of a morning person, huh?" I poured myself coffee and stared out the window. The Hudson was gray and calm. The city felt miles away. Dad walked in and started opening cabinets. "Don't you have regular bread?" I told him we did. He said, "Not this grain stuff. Real bread." I didn't respond. That afternoon I took my kids out for a walk just to get air. When I came back, I found Erica's husband asleep on my couch with his socks off. The dog was lying on the rug next to him, chewing on one of Lena's stuffed animals. My mom was on the terrace with a glass of wine from my collection, one I had saved for something special. She didn't ask. That night I decided I was done cooking for them. I made dinner for just me and the kids. Erica noticed. "Oh, we're not eating together tonight," she said, walking past the table with a smirk. "We weren't invited either," I said. She didn't reply. Then just after the kids went to bed, it started again. Erica came out of the guest room holding one of her son's jackets. "This wasn't in our room this morning. Why was it moved?" I looked at her. "I don't know. Maybe the dog dragged it." Maybe your kid left it somewhere. She stared at me like I was lying. Then Mom stepped in. We try to come here, support you, make the trip, and you act like we're a burden. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because that was rich coming from her. I told them they could leave. That I'd already booked them a car for Saturday morning. Erica froze. You're kicking us out? No, I said. I'm reclaiming my home. My dad muttered something under his breath and walked back to the couch. Erica rolled her eyes and slammed the door to the guest room. Mom just shook her head and said, we were trying to be family. I said, you had 8 years to be family. One holiday doesn't erase that. They stayed the night, but it wasn't the same. No fake compliments. No awkward small talk. Just silence. Thick and heavy. The next morning the car came at 9 a.m. I didn't wake them. I let the driver buzz until they scrambled to pack. They didn't say goodbye. Not to me. Not to the kids. But I didn't care. I thought that was the end of it. I thought I'd close the door and feel relief. Instead, I went into my bedroom to put away laundry and noticed something strange. A small velvet envelope I had tucked behind the TV, the one with emergency cash, was missing. $2,000. Gone. I stood in front of the TV, staring at the empty space where the velvet envelope had been. It wasn't possible. I kept it tucked under a decorative box. Not out in the open, not obvious, but easy enough for me to grab if I needed cash in a hurry. It was gone. At first I thought maybe I moved it. Maybe I used the money for something weeks ago and forgot. But no, I remembered exactly. $2,000 in hundreds. I'd withdrawn it for emergencies after the citywide blackout earlier this year. I checked everywhere. Drawers, shelves, the safe in the closet, even the laundry basket. Nothing. The house was too quiet. My kids were at a friend's down the hall watching a movie. I was alone. Just me and the lingering scent of my mother's perfume still clinging to the hallway. For a split second I thought about calling them. But I didn't. Instead I checked the guest rooms. Towels crumpled. Coffee stains on my white bedding. Empty wine glasses left on the nightstands. And there, on the floor next to the bed Erica slept in, was one of my earrings. A small gold hoop. The one I'd lost months ago. Which was strange. I never brought it in there. I picked it up, looked at it, and realized something else. The velvet pouch that matched the earring was missing too. That's when I knew. I didn't need proof. I didn't need to accuse. The pattern was familiar. Take what isn't yours, pretend it never happened, and act offended when confronted. It was exactly what Erica did her whole life. She'd borrowed money in college and never paid it back. She'd borrowed my car once and brought it back with a dent, claiming it had been there before. Always with that same wide-eyed innocence. So this felt different. This was deliberate. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time just breathing. Then my phone buzzed. It was Erica. Hey, we left something at your place. Can you check the nightstand in the guest room? There should be a small jewelry pouch. I read that text 3 times. My hands started shaking, not from sadness but from the cruel irony of it. I wrote back, no jewelry pouch here. She replied, weird. Must have packed it by mistake. Sorry if the place is messy, the kids were restless. Hope you're not mad at Mom. I didn't answer. The next morning I went about my day like nothing happened. Dropped the kids at school. Met with a client. Ordered new flowers for the living room. Everything looked perfect again. Spotless, serene, expensive. But I couldn't shake that hollow feeling in my chest. Then that afternoon I got another message, this time from my mom. Your sister said you think something's missing. Don't start drama, Madison. We don't need that right now. Not did something happen? Not are you okay? Just don't start drama. I didn't reply to her either. That night I poured myself a glass of wine and stood by the window. The city lights looked endless, sharp and cold. My reflection in the glass looked calm, but I didn't feel calm. For years I had imagined revenge would feel satisfying, that if I ever got the upper hand I'd feel powerful. But this wasn't that. This was heavier. Because revenge didn't fix the emptiness of realizing they never loved you enough to be sorry. I decided I'd forgive her, but only in silence. Not with words. Not with calls or explanations. Just by erasing her from the space she once wanted to fill. But that night as I was locking the terrace door, I noticed something strange. A shadow behind the curtains. A movement I couldn't explain. I froze. When I pulled them back there was nothing there. Just the city. But on the terrace floor, wedged under one of the chairs, was a folded envelope, damp from the rain. The velvet one. I picked it up, opened it slowly, expecting the money to be gone. But it wasn't. All $2,000 were still inside. And on top of the bills, a note. In Erica's handwriting. It said, you left this out. Don't lose it next time. No signature. No apology. Just that. And for some reason that felt worse than theft. I didn't touch the envelope for almost an hour. I just stood there in the kitchen staring at it like it was radioactive. The velvet was damp and slightly torn at the corner, probably from being shoved under the chair in the rain. But the real damage wasn't the water. It was the note. That stupid note. You left this out. Don't lose it next time. No apology. No explanation. Just that, like I was the irresponsible one. Like I was lucky she didn't take it. Like I should be thanking her for returning something she never should have touched. I opened it. Fully. $2,000. Still there. Every single bill counted and clean, layered the same way I'd left them. But now the envelope felt dirty. Like something that didn't belong to me anymore. I sat down on the edge of the couch and just stared. And in that moment something shifted. This wasn't about a mistake. It wasn't about holiday tension or old family wounds. It was about control. Erica couldn't stand that I'd built a life without her. Without them. That I'd succeeded quietly without asking for their approval. And so she made sure to leave her fingerprints on it. One final petty way to remind me she still could. She didn't take the money because she needed it. She took it because she wanted me to wonder. To sit with it. To feel unsettled. And it worked. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up in the living room with the lights off, watching the city flicker below me while the note sat there on the counter like a ghost I couldn't shake. By morning I'd made a decision. I didn't text Erica. I didn't confront her. I didn't give her what she wanted. A reaction, a fight, another scene she could twist into a story where I was the unstable one. I just blocked her. Her number. Her social media. Every shared photo, every tagged post. Gone. Then I called the school and removed my mother from the emergency contact list. Changed the building code. Informed the doorman that we weren't expecting visitors. It was done. Later that afternoon I sat my kids down and told them the truth. Not everything. Just enough. That some people, even family, don't always make you feel safe. That it's okay to love people from a distance. That we wouldn't be seeing Grandma or Aunt Erica for a while. They didn't ask why. Lena just nodded and said, okay. That night while they were asleep I walked through the loft and started collecting. Every framed photo that had my parents in it. Every picture from birthdays where I had to beg them to show up. Every shot of Erica and me pretending to be sisters in matching holiday pajamas. I put them in a box. Not out of anger. But because I didn't want lies on my walls anymore. The loft looked better without them. Cleaner. Calmer. Honest. I thought that would be the end of it. But the next morning while I was cleaning out the guest bathroom, I found a second envelope. Tucked in the cabinet behind the towels. Smaller. Thin. Inside. A folded receipt for an expensive downtown boutique. Dated the day before they left. Paid in cash. 2 items. One listed as child's sweater. The other, gold earrings. I didn't need to guess whose handwriting was scribbled in the corner. We'll send photos once we're back. It wasn't just the money. She'd taken the earrings too. The other half of the pair I'd found on the guest room floor. She didn't forget to return it. She returned the one she didn't want. That's when it stopped being about theft. That's when it became betrayal. Calculated. Petty. I held the receipt for a long time before sliding it into the same box as the photos. Then I taped it shut. Forgiveness didn't live here anymore. Neither did they. I kept the receipt. Not because I needed it but because it felt like proof that I hadn't imagined any of it. That little piece of paper from a boutique I'd never set foot in now lived in a taped-up box in my closet. Buried under years of birthdays, holidays, and fake smiles framed in glass. That was the last thing I kept from them. Everything else. Gone. I wiped the photos off my shelves. Replaced the wine glasses they stained. Bought new towels for the guest rooms. I even tossed the rug the dog had ruined even though it could have been cleaned. I didn't want the memory. I didn't want the reminder. It was like pulling a splinter that had been under my skin for years. Painful at first. But once it was out I finally healed. They didn't reach out. Not for a while. Not until the silence stretched long enough to make them uncomfortable. Started with a text from my mom. Just a single line. We all say things we don't mean. No context. No apology. Like it was my job to read between the lines. Like forgiveness was something that could be implied. I ignored it. Then Erica texted 2 days later. Lucas still talks about the loft. He misses you. So do I. Followed by a picture of her daughter wearing the exact gold earring she hadn't returned. The one I knew she had. I didn't block her. I didn't reply either. Some things deserve silence more than they deserve closure. I started spending more time at home not because I had to, but because it felt like mine again. The loft was warm not because of them but because of what I built. The kids were happier. Calmer. My son stopped asking when they'd visit again. Lena stopped drawing Grandma with hearts around her. That part of their childhood, the one I tried so hard to force into a family mold, was fading. One night while we were watching a movie, Lena leaned over and whispered, "Do they still think we're coming to Christmas?" I said no. She nodded and said, "Okay. Can we just stay here this year?" I told her we could. That night after they went to bed, I pulled out the envelope one last time. Not the boutique receipt. The velvet one. The cash was still inside, untouched. I thought about using it, maybe something reckless, something loud, but instead I took it and locked it in the safe. Not because I needed it, but because I wanted it far away from where they'd touched it. Then I poured a glass of wine. I sat on the terrace and stared at the skyline, feeling the kind of peace I used to believe only came from fixing things. But this wasn't that kind of peace. This was the kind that comes after you stop trying to be understood. After you stop expecting people to become who they should have been. I never confronted Erica. I never returned the call to my mom. Not because I was above it, but because I was finally done with it. And the best part? They noticed. Because silence, when it's coming from someone you used to dismiss, is louder than any fight. I didn't just walk away. I disappeared from their narrative. No more updates. No more texts. No more photos for them to show off to their friends like they were part of my story. They weren't. Not anymore. A few weeks later, a box arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside was the second gold earring. Wrapped in tissue. No note. I dropped it in the trash without flinching. Because forgiveness doesn't always look like a second chance. Sometimes it looks like nothing at all. And for the first time in my life, nothing felt like everything I'd ever needed. The update. About a month later, I got invited to a networking dinner hosted by one of the senior partners at my firm. A private rooftop event in Soho. All glass walls and soft jazz and linen napkins folded like origami. I almost didn't go. I sat on my bed for half an hour debating whether it was worth pretending to be charming around people who'd probably ask about my personal life, my background, my support system. But I went. And I'm glad I did. The view was incredible. Manhattan stretched wide and glowing beneath us, like a reward I'd earned quietly on my own terms. I stood with a glass of wine, answering questions about my career, my clients, the firm's latest merger. Then a woman in a sleek navy dress asked, "Do you have family here in the city?" I paused for a second. Not out of hesitation, but because I realized how free it felt not to explain. "They're back home," I said, nodding gently. "But honestly, my real family's waiting for me. 2 kids, movie night, probably popcorn all over the couch." She smiled and said, "Sounds like the good life." And I realized it was. Not perfect. Not clean of history. But finally mine.